Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me all right? Can I get Caitlin or someone? Can you just give me an indication that, okay, good. Thank you. Well, welcome. We may have a few more people joining. There are over 100 people registered for this webinar, so we're pretty excited about that. My name is Lynn Hoyce, as you can see on the screen. I am a member of the local food program team, as are several of the folks who are speaking here, and then we've got folks from across the state from other organizations too who will be sharing. This is mostly an extension focused webinar because that's who the original audience was when Caitlin Szymanski came up with this idea, but it also seemed like a really good idea to share it with a lot of other folks in the network. So everybody is welcome, and we think everything will be applicable to everyone, but it may just be a little more extension focused. So bear that in mind as we go through. This webinar will be recorded, and the link will be sent out along with resources next week. So you will get the opportunity to review this again, and then eventually it will be housed on our website. And that, again, is the local food program team. And you can find us by going to Iowa State and putting in the search bar local foods program team. There are many upcoming opportunities with grants, and my coworker Teresa is going to share that information. I wanted to let you know a little bit about who we are as a local food program team, and then we'll jump right into the presentation. Our work focuses on farm to school, community food system work, county, working with county folks, many of you on the webinar. There is a Food Hub Managers Working Group, and I also convene and facilitate a group called the Regional Food System Working Group. And I wanted to extend an invitation for the meeting coming up on November 9th. It will be about grant writing and fundraising, especially as it relates to all of us who work in the food system. So we would love to invite you. That'll be at in Story City at the Fairview Lodge. If you want more information on that, you should be able to go to our website or send me a quick note and I can provide that information. So I think with that, I'll go ahead and get started so that we stay on track. We have a lot of information, so we're going to move quickly. Oh, one other thing, we do want to take questions. Since there are so many people who are signed up, you are all muted. But we would love to have questions either during the webinar or afterwards. So if you want to go along the bottom, you should have the opportunity to go into chat. And again, my coworker Caitlin will take a look at those questions as they come in, and we'll try and answer them as we can during the presentations if we have time, and if not, then we'll get to them at the end. If we don't get them answered, we will try and respond to you. If you hear a question or you don't hear your question come up, just send us a note, and then we'll go ahead and send that information out to you independently. So, okay. Oopsie, I've got to get back to sorry. The goal of Farm to School is healthy kids, healthy communities, and healthy farms, because right now 1/3 of U.S. kids are at risk for mental and physical diseases and challenges. And Farm to School activities are a powerful tool in helping to combat these health challenges and helping to support all students feel energized at school. So why focus on schools? Children currently receive more than 1/4, 26% of their total energy intake from food they obtain and consume at school. This indicates that no other institution has the level of influence and access to students as their school does. That being the case, schools have the significant potential to influence children to make healthful dietary choices. I think it's really cool too, as you can see at the bottom, a positive unintended consequence is that staff nutrition also improves, which provides a great model to students. So what's it all about? The core elements of Farm to School are education, procurement, and school gardens. And as you can see, those kids down below are having a great time getting into the soil, and they're having a good time with school gardening, as you can tell. So there's information on this slide that gives you a little overview. I also wanted to show you this next slide, which is from my coworker, Chelsea Chris, the FoodCorps fellow, who you will hear from later. She put this together, and I think it's just a great way to kind of get a quick synopsis. So the 4 C's, classroom, cafeteria, and community. As you can see, classroom is things like school gardens as classrooms, or hands-on cooking lessons, pick a better snack training, cross-age teaching, and farm-to-school curriculum connections. And there is a lot of curriculum out there, which you'll hear about later too, and we have connections to that on our site. The cafeteria, where you can have farmer visits, you have cafeteria celebrations, taste tests, that's where the local procurement would fall, and then local food promotion. And then the community is that wellness policy support. Wellness policies began to be mandated this July, so those are going to be more important. It's also the farmer-school partnerships, food hub partnerships, after school and summer meals, 4-H clubs, and all kinds of volunteers, including master gardeners. Whoops, sorry, I'm going to look at the, I'm going to try and check the questions too as we go, if there are any. So best practices. This is a question that many of you had, and we are trying to answer. Some of you sent in questions ahead of time, so several of us are trying to answer as many of those as we can, and one of them was, well, how would we even get started? Here are some websites where you can go to get ideas about best practices. It's National Farm to Schools website. Tammy Stotts here in Iowa is outstanding and just has done for many years and continues to do great work with the Iowa Department of Ag and Land Stewardship Farm to School program. She's just a dynamo, and she has a new grant that will be highlighting Local Food Day, and she's just fabulous. And then we recently became State Corps partners, and that information will be on our website. And again, what that mostly means is we would love to be a resource for you. So any questions you have, we've got so many folks here who have done this work for such a very long time. And if we don't know the answer, we probably have a way to find it. And then finally, USDA Farm to School, another wonderful partner who's just put out a new grant that you'll hear about later. So a few ideas, though, of what's the best way to get schools on board with a farm to school project. And we may have some food service professionals on our call today. And in a survey we've read from earlier, one thing we realize is that food service personnel say that they need guidance. They need strategies to help improve adherence to the school wellness policy standards, to the nutrition standards, and especially to long-term sustainability and funding for the ingredients. One of the biggest issues, or there are many issues that school food service personnel face, funding and ordering and procurement, the process is one of them. So one way is just to get to know your food service personnel and find out what kind of help do they need. Another way to get involved is to maybe go find your local wellness policy team at the schools, because as I said earlier, those are now a mandate, and there's a direct connection between farm to school programs and meeting objectives in the local wellness policies. So this would be a wonderful way that you might offer your resources to just come alongside and join that team and see if you could contribute to helping the folks meet the requirements in their local wellness policy. If you need information on what local wellness policies are too, don't hesitate to ask one of us, and we'd be happy to give you some direction to that information. And another great thing to do, and again, these are all long-term, so most of them deal with making relationships, building trust, and helping be the resource, and especially extension. That's what our job is to do, is to be a resource to things that the community needs. Building a coalition is absolutely key. Tammy Stotts and her farm to school chapters, that's an absolute requirement, because just like raising a child can take a village, certainly being part of farm to school and feeding children takes a village of people too. So having this diverse group of stakeholders can really go a long way towards making farm to school a program that can have long-term sustainability in the schools. And one study specifically states farm to school may be an innovative solution to improving the school environment and the quality of food served. And it goes on to say the integration of nutrition and agriculture in the curriculum successfully increased nutrition awareness among students as well as faculty and staff. So it can help. So that is, I hope, a quick down and dirty introduction to the big picture of farm to school. As I said, I'm a part of REFSWIG. That's a group that we would love to have any of you join us for. We meet quarterly and we have themes. As I said, this November it'll be grant writing and fundraising. We're also core partners with that National Farm to School Network. And I would love to turn this program over to Chelsea now.
All right, I will start sharing my screen right here. All right, does that look good to everyone? Can you see that? Okay, cool. So wanted to start off with this. Thank you so much, Lynn. No matter what kind of farm to school work you're doing or what you would like to get started, we really believe as our state network and for folks wanting to join this work that equity is the foundation of why and how we do farm to school work. So as a state network of community supporters, we share the understanding that all children have a right to healthy food, regardless of race, class, or geography. We pursue farm to school work and systems change in schools that makes food equity a reality for Iowa students. We recognize and help our partners name and understand structural inequities and cycles of discrimination that reinforce issues we addressed, such as access to healthy food, opportunity for local partners, growing safe places to play and gather, student-driven projects and programs, teacher training and resources related to cultural relevance and experiential learning, and food service partnerships to enhance local and fresh food options. So we really believe that farm to school work presents just ample opportunity to organize systems change in schools, and that's change that reinforces student leadership, collectivist cultures, and inclusive learning. And we believe that food is the best way to take care of each other through all of this. So I wanted to offer that as a framing for this work that I think is really important, that I know everyone else who is involved in farm to school also believes is important. So with that, I will move into discussing a little bit of what our FoodCorps Iowa program is all about. I am the fellow for our state program, so I support our 12 service members and their sites across the state. And our mission for at FoodCorps is that we're growing a nationwide team of AmeriCorps leaders who connect kids to real food and help them grow up healthy. So this is a picture of our 12 service members and myself at our national orientation out in Portland, Oregon this year. Happy with their carrots. We believe in a nation of well-nourished children who grow up knowing what healthy food is, how it grows and where it comes from, and who have access to it every day. And we are supporting and growing a generation of leaders with the skills and experiences to make this work a reality. So our leaders are our 215 service members who are serving in 17 states across the country, plus Washington, D.C. There's a map. You can see Iowa's kind of a little island in the Midwest right now. So we're really proud of our Midwest representation. And here's where we serve in Iowa. So like I said, we support 12 service members across the state at these 8 different sites, several rural, several very urban communities. The county extension sites who host FoodCorps service programs are highlighted in red. So that's Blackhawk County, Linn County, and Wapello County Extension. And then the other 5 sites there are school districts that directly host the program. So we have a great mix of partners in how that is set up. And a little bit of what we do. So as Lynn was mentioning, our service members and sites partner with 1 to 2 schools for their service term. And we partner with schools for lots of the reasons that Lynn said, as those are places where kids spend most of their time during the day. And for our most vulnerable students, schools are where they eat the majority of their calories every day. So it's a really important and effective point of intervention around food. And our service members build their service around 3 focus areas. These are hands-on lessons, healthy school meals, and a school-wide culture of health. So this kind of framing helps service members plan and lead their service throughout the year. So I'll go into a little bit more detail of what the specifics look like for each of these focus areas. So hands-on lessons in supporting classroom lessons, garden lessons, after-school programs. We're working with students outdoors and indoors to learn about school food during and after the school day. So this sort of work really rests on successful partnerships with teachers. A lot of the times our service members are looking at the core standards that teachers need to be teaching and connecting that to healthy food activities, really hands-on experiential learning that can take place outside in a garden or can take place in a classroom with cooking, but connects to the standards around science and math and literacy that they need to be meeting anyways. In supporting healthy school meals, our service members lead taste tests in the cafeteria, promote local and the fruit and vegetable options that are on the school lunch line every day. They help organize celebrations of food for National School Lunch Week or National School Breakfast Week, whatever might be going on at a school or a district level. And really envisioning the cafeteria as another place for learning and another place for developing social skills and trying new things and developing positive attitudes with different foods that are being offered. So success in this space really rests on partnerships with school food service and the staff who makes all of the breakfast, lunch, snacks happen every day in school. So really, really incredible people to partner with on this. And so we're working with staff in schools at a kitchen level and also at a district level to do more widespread local sourcing or celebrations in that way. And to develop a school-wide culture of health, we're working on finding resources and partnerships that celebrate healthy food throughout the whole school. So as Lynn mentioned, wellness policies are a big piece of this work, and those function again at a school or a district level. There's often teams built around supporting wellness policies, and schools are moving toward that, so we're helping with that. Building these healthy school teams is a really great way to set goals and create action plans from a year-to-year basis and then ongoing. So answering questions like, how do we support healthier fundraisers, or how do we change our schedule to have recess before lunch, or what kind of local sourcing options are we doing? And then also developing visuals that reinforce healthy options that are available in the cafeteria or for snacks, or reinforce the learning that happens in the classroom through our Pick a Better Snack education or additional lessons that relate to food. So how are we showing these, photos of these and pictures of kids engaging in the garden or making healthy choices at school, all over the school. We have a really, really connected and supportive network of FoodCorps alum, both across the country and across the state of Iowa. Lots of our folks move from FoodCorps service into teaching or food service leadership positions, local food distribution, social justice work, and farming. And this is a picture of our team visiting some alumni who operate a farm called Turkey River Farm up in Northeast Iowa. So even after FoodCorps service, the network stays really strong, and folks continue to support school districts and the kind of healthy food education that we're doing in schools. So Pete and Natasha are growing food and sourcing it to Central Community Schools up in Elkader. So this is a list of some experiences and skills that we get to practice every day in FoodCorps service, and sharing them as they might serve as some inspiration for your county extension office or your organization to picture what it would look like to start partnering with schools on farm to school work and how this kind of lands directly in schools. So the skills that you would build into your work plan, or the types of skills you'd be looking to hire in people or keep up on throughout the partnerships. So some of these are doing nutrition education and public health promotion in a school context, practicing teaching and facilitation around wellness policies, meetings, lessons, learning how to integrate gardening and agriculture into the life and the culture of a school more broadly, community organizing through all of the partnerships and resources that we connect with in school partnerships. Connecting food system influencers like farmers, food service, food hubs, leading the culturally responsive lessons during school, in the cafeteria, and after school, practicing event planning with school community and supporting outreach to families and students, and fostering partnerships across all of these areas, across all of the different spaces that happen in the school, and all of the potential folks who live in the community who have great skills to bring to this work. So I wanted to plug an upcoming opportunity that is designed for county extension offices related to farm to school. And this is the School Garden 101 Train the Trainer. School Garden 101 is an opportunity for teachers and school staff to come together to learn about how to use a school garden during the school day. So this is information about a training that will train you to lead that with your school staff. So thanks to Sue DeBleek for sending this out and organizing this. It's free, and we'll send out the link to register after the webinar. And just really quickly, if you're interested in becoming a FoodCorps service site, please email me for more information. Lynn and I will be hosting a webinar in December to talk more about the details and requirements for that. And if you're ever looking for any farm to school resources or have questions, feel free to reach out at any time. So I'm going to now introduce one of our FoodCorps service site supervisors, Ann Torbert. She's a supervisor in Linn County, and she's going to talk a little bit about her experience with farm to school.
Thanks, Chelsea, and thanks also for running the slides. I greatly appreciate it. To get started with our work in Linn County, I've been privileged to be a site supervisor now for, I think, about 4 years, and I've had wonderfully talented folks that I get to work with as well as learn from at the same time. So let's get started. Why Linn County, and go ahead and advance the slide, Chelsea. Why Linn County is going local. I saw it as a great way of keeping dollars in my community. Many cases, local farmers I found are also more flexible and very customer oriented too, and very price friendly. When you tell them you're with 4-H or with the extension office, I've had one orchard give me the ISU friend discount rate. The other reason we found that the produce is much fresher. We also like that it encourages community. You know, you're building a different kind of network when you're working with farms and looking at food. The other piece for us that was really important is that I looked at our Iowa Youth Survey data here in Linn County, and specifically if you go to questions B11 and B12, you may find the statistics are kind of amazing. In Iowa, according to 2016 Iowa Youth Survey data, only 28% of the 6th, 8th, and 11th graders surveyed ate 2 or more fruit servings daily. And with that same group of kids, only 12% of Iowa youth surveyed had 3 servings of vegetables per day. So, you know, we've got an awful lot of kids not getting the produce that they need in order to be healthy. For us, the next step was looking at where to get the produce. And I included a publication there that we found really helpful to get us started. We're also fortunate in our community that we do have a food cooperative grocery store type of setup. We also have access to a food hub as well as local farms. And the last thing that we worked on was looking at payment. And it's really important when you're paying, especially the farmer, to set up what option fits best for that situation. You know, if they're open to an invoice and not getting a check for a month, great. If they'd rather have a credit card, you know, those are things to work out ahead of time so that you continue to have a real positive relationship with that farmer. Next one, Chelsea. So when it comes to purchasing, you want to make sure that you get the amounts right. And we really had to think through, are we using a meal-sized portion for an event or a tasting portion? And much of our work here is around that tasting size portion. Think grocery store size sample, and you've got the right idea. Tasting portions also allow us to try a lot of new foods, and kids don't feel like they're wasting food if they didn't like it because it's just a bite. The other thing with our Pick a Better Snack grant that we have the opportunity to plan with a local foods coordinator assigned to our project. So many times we can have a conversation about, we're serving so many portions, how much do we need, and they can really help us with that. The other thing that we also focus on is planning ahead. You know, if produce needs to be grown, we need to give that farmer time to grow the produce. So we have to be real thoughtful and intentional. So let's go into the sample projects. The best success we had was the Great Apple Crunch event, and we've done that for a couple of years. Our FoodCorps members really got that started. However, last year we also had the Great Apple Crunch event going on the same time as our National Youth Science Day event. So we sourced apples for that event as well. We were getting apples. Why not get more apples? The farmer had the apples picked and boxed up for me to pick up very quickly. All we had to do was wash. We put them in that container and we served. The benefits, very easy, healthy, and we had no food allergies to deal with. Teachers loved it. The farmer gave me the ISU friendly discount, and they were 50 cents a pound. You can't go wrong in that deal, and my learning opportunity out of that was it pays to build the relationship with the local farmer. Our next example, Chelsea, is around spinach. And for our Pick a Better Snack, we wanted to try locally grown spinach, and we worked with our coordinator and gave them 4 months advance notice. We figured that was plenty of time to grow spinach. And what we ended up doing, all of that spinach came from one local farm. It was bagged up. It had been rinsed. We went back and washed it. Kids tried individual leaves, and then we turned them into popsicles. We froze over 1,000 popsicle sample sizes for kids to eat, and they really enjoyed hearing the story about where the spinach was grown and how it got to their school. The next example I have is our 4-H Club Leaders Meeting. And I think it's real important for us who work with 4-H clubs to understand that leaders have lives outside of that volunteer role. They have families, and they have other ways that Extension can help them in their daily life. So what we ended up doing was I spent $90 on local foods, and we had a variety of tasting samples, and you can see our samples on the table there. I shared publications related to how they can get local food. And the other piece was we taught them how to conduct taste tests in their club. And lastly, 10% of our folks, so about 4 of them, had never had hummus before. They thought it was too expensive to buy, so they had never bought it. They had never tried it. And they were very surprised how much they enjoyed hummus. So to me, I thought that was a great win. Next slide up is the work that we're still doing with the bean and rice recipe. We're headed into our 2nd year, and I'm hoping that we get this one wrapped up. The school had requested help getting kids to eat beans. That's one of those nutrition challenges that they have, and their options are incredibly limited. Refried beans and maybe baked beans. And the kids take them, but they don't eat them. So as a wise person once said, it's not nutrition until it's eaten. What we ended up doing was we contacted a local farmer who actually grows black beans, and we were able to purchase a bag of dried black beans. Our staff worked with a chef out of Des Moines school system, and together we've created the bean and rice recipe. So we've changed it from rice and beans to beans and rice, where the kids are making it count as a protein. So we've mixed up some ratios. Our staff adapted the recipe. We sampled over 1,000 people. We also kept track of what it was paired with on the lunch line that day. Our results turned out a little bit better if it was paired with quesadillas versus chicken strips and pizza. So even with those young taste buds, the pairing does matter. On our next slide, Chelsea, it's real important to involve those partners in taste tests. And what we ended up doing, when I can have outside folks help me in a taste test, I really try to explain to them that their role today, even though it's short, is helping to raise healthier kids that may have fewer health issues by eating healthy and trying new kinds of food. In the top slide, one of our Extension Council members helped with a taste test, handed out office dots. And she was proud to be handing out office dots to the kids who voted. In the bottom sample, or the bottom photo, we have 2 folks from US Cellular, and they also did sampling for us and went on to volunteer in other 4-H ways. Next slide. Make sure that you put some time into the education. For us, we're primarily working in elementary buildings, so we focus on nonfiction books. We also focus on letting kids know where the food is grown, how it's harvested, how it helps their body, and how long of a drive the food had to get to their table. Lastly, we want kids to have input and voice, and they get to vote. And the final slide is just kind of an outline that I use of how to prepare food if we're going local at an event, all the things to keep in mind. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Anne. It was a great overview. If folks have questions, again, use that chat box or save them till the end. And next up, we'll have Teresa Wimmerslag from the local foods team share some more info.
Hi, everybody. Pulling up my slides here. I'm Teresa Wimmerslag, and I'm going to share with you some of the resources to help you with sourcing and serving local foods in your schools. For 10 years, I've coordinated the farm to school work in Northeast Iowa for the Northeast Iowa Food and Fitness Initiative. And our focus has been on how do we develop schools as a market for local farms. And as a result, local schools have purchased over $300,000 from farmers since 2008. In case you haven't figured it out yet, our local foods team at Iowa State University is very passionate about local foods. And we hope that we can be the first stop for questions about your food system questions. Our team members have a lot of expertise in facilitation, strategic planning, food system development. We have people working on food hubs, food safety, and farmers markets, as well as food production, beginning farmers, program evaluation, and of course, farm to school and farm to institution. I only have 10 minutes, and we have a lot of resources to share. But don't worry, this webinar is being recorded, and you will be getting a copy of this fact sheet in your inbox after the webinar, or you can always find this information on the local foods team website. One of the great things about Farm to School is that it cuts across all of Extension's program areas: ag and natural resources, human sciences, 4-H, and community and economic development. The local foods team has developed a lot of their own resources, but there are other Extension programs that can help with Farm to School. So I didn't want to miss them, but at the same time, now you have an idea of some of the other things that are out there. We're not going to deal with these items specifically today, but be sure to check with your local food team members and we can help you navigate choices that will work best in your situation. We have lots of different county-based people on the webinar today, and I want to make sure that you're aware of the fact that we have a new type of extension educator in our system, and they're called local food coordinators. They support the development of the food system work in different clusters throughout the state, and they help create partnerships and increase awareness of the use of local foods. Their job is to have the pulse of the food system. So even though you may not have a food coordinator in your county, check around. Maybe there's one in your neighborhood or in your region that can help connect you and help you find those farmers that are wanting to do the same type of thing you are. I promise you, those local food coordinators would appreciate the help. So I've been tasked with talking about how to get more food into schools, and school regulations are complicated, and I don't have time to go through all of them today. So you might hear from food service about the school bidding process. This is a great first place to start to help understand some of those regulations. It's a book created, which is in a PDF download by the USDA Food and Nutrition Service. It answers many of the questions about procurement and local foods. It talks about using food from gardens, and it talks about food safety issues. You'll learn about terms like formal bidding, informal bidding, and micro purchases. And it also has bidding templates for schools to use when they're talking to farmers or food hubs. So I always want people to start there first. In Iowa, one of the first things that we had to figure out when we started Farm to School is what are the best foods to use. We've heard that local foods can be expensive, so we wanted to narrow that list a little bit as to what are the things that we should focus on first. We did a survey with the Food and Fitness Initiative, and we came across these top 12 items. These are foods that can be grown in Northeast Iowa at a price similar to what the schools were already paying. The prices were based on in-season prices for produce grown in the field versus in a greenhouse, and some of the products were competitive at the price for seconds. If you don't know what a second is, those are the items that are maybe a smaller size or they have minor blemishes. And they're great for food service settings where the foods are chopped up and prepared differently. And another resource is the Farm to School Cycle Menu. In 2012, the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act was passed and created all new regulations for school meals. We had several food service directors ask the partners of the Food and Fitness Initiative for help in helping them meet these new regulations. So we went out and received a USDA Farm to School grant to help develop a cycle menu that would incorporate local foods all month long. What makes this cycle menu unique, and you can see 2 of the weeks of the 5-week cycle on your screen, is that it creates opportunities to plug in those local foods throughout the whole month. And this screen that you're seeing is an actual menu from a school during October Farm to School month, and you can see that she's trying and serving something local every day. Local food in schools don't just mean fruits and vegetables. We can also use meats. By working with the Iowa Food Hub, several schools in Northeast Iowa have been serving local pork, local turkey, ground beef, and hamburgers for meals. The publication down at the bottom is a 3-part series, and it talks about how we did that. Sometimes school food service might be nervous about handling all that fresh local produce. The University of Wisconsin Extension has created a series of videos geared towards school food service to help them sharpen their culinary skills to handle large quantities of produce straight from the farm. Then there's always the question of how much do I buy? You know, Ann touched on this a little bit. This is a great calculator from the Oklahoma Farm to School program. It talks about, it helps you determine how much of real food do you need and before it's cut down into the servings, which in a school is typically 1/4 cup or 1/2 cup servings. So if we look at the screen and the cantaloupe specifically, they were trying to serve 10,000 meals, and it looks like we'll need 1,500 pounds of cantaloupe for 1/4 cup servings, or if we need 1/2 cup servings, you double that. So 3,000 pounds to be able to serve that whole district. Now we can move a little bit into the food safety world. We know food safety is important all along the food chain. This handy checklist is a great way for a farmer to outline their food safety practices on their farm. Food service directors can also ask the farmers to complete this list as part of their bidding process. Don't forget that school gardens can be a great source of local food for your school. This publication contains some sample protocols for schools to use as they design best practices for their school gardens. You may hear the term GAP practices, which stands for Good Agricultural Practices. Those are the basic foundation for any sort of food safety program on the farm. And this publication uses that language and talks about how to apply those GAP principles to the school garden environment. It also contains a handy harvest log that helps you keep track of how much produce came out of your garden for the year. Paired with that is a series of videos that can be used in the classroom before the students even go out to the garden for the year. They're short, 4 to 8 minute videos that have narration where the kids are actually talking about how to be good food safety stewards in the garden. The videos can be followed by scenarios or discussion questions or quizzes, which can help verify learning. We know in 4-H it's important to provide opportunities for children to achieve mastery. So if they go through this course and complete the test, you may want to consider giving them a certificate for being able to be food safety pros. I had a few questions that were submitted beforehand. I want to do a quick time check to make sure that I'm on track. And maybe it looks like I'm out of time. So maybe we'll come back to these questions towards the end of the webinar, and we can review them again.
So we have now Kate Olsen, who will be giving us a testimonial on her recent reception of a farm to school planning grant.
Okay, let me get my screen up here. All right. Let's see. All right, can everybody see my slides? Awesome. Well, I just want to talk a little bit about a grant that Cass County has to do farm to school work here. We wrote and got a USDA farm to school planning grant. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're doing with that, but I'm going to start with a little bit of history of why we got the grant, because I will tell you, knowing the history and having some background is fairly important. One of the things they ask you to do in the application process is provide some pretty solid reasons why you have had success in the past. So just a short history here of local foods in Cass County. We've had a group since probably the early 2000s called the Cass County Cultivators. They really pushed our Board of Supervisors to make that formal. And so our local food policy council was started in 2008, 2009 as a formal countywide board overseen by the Board of Supervisors. So we have a small budget from the Board of Supervisors every year to do work related to local food. We also have received a farmers market promotion grant in 2013. So we had a little bit of experience working with USDA grant processes. And then we are also currently working with the ISU Community Food Systems through a process since about 2015. It used to be called the Agriurbanism Toolkit, and now it's kind of morphed into the Community Food Systems group. So that is a little bit of kind of the history that we wrote into the grant. The other piece they want to know is your history of working with schools. So our schools have a long history of doing education activities, and the strongest reason that we were able to write in for the grant was that we kind of wanted to coordinate all of these activities that the schools are doing. So our teachers have been doing a lot of ag education activities, but kind of piecemeal in the classrooms, mostly if the teachers themselves were interested, and we're looking at maybe taking a more systemic approach to that. One of our school districts here in Cass County, the Cumberland Anita Messina group, has a partnership with the local Cass County Conservation Board. They had a piece of land donated that they used it as an outdoor classroom for students. They bus them there on a regular basis and do all sorts of natural resources work there. all three of our ag ed instructors in all three districts do have some sort of access to horticulture education and greenhouses, but the way those were being pulled into school cafeterias was really pretty hit and miss. We've done some small things with Iowa Farm to School in the past, providing basically markets with monopoly money that kids could buy local produce, but again, kind of a one-day event where they talked about local foods instead of having it being a curriculum-based repeated activity. Also did some square foot gardening education that kind of crossed over with schools. And then the last couple years, we've been working with our master gardeners to do summer gardening with some of our recreation facilities in town. Another piece that folks had kind of asked me about is how do you get your extension council on board with doing activities like this? With extension councils, we found it comes down to, is there a justified need to do the program in the county? So first of all, we've been through a couple different needs assessments with our extension council, and one of the things that always comes up is reaching more of the youth that are in low-income families, more of the youth that maybe would not be exposed to the traditional 4-H model, and Farm to School kind of fits that need pretty nicely. Our Food Policy Council did a priority planning session in 2013. They had a pretty clearly identified need to get engaged with Farm to School work. We also had a local community transformation grant through our public health department. Farm to School surfaced as one of the #1 priorities there. The Extension Council has, in the last couple of years, written some supplemental funding for a food and health educator as a partnership in. We used it last year to co-host an AmeriCorps member, and this year we're using it to help supplement the Farm to School grant. And then our community food systems project that we're working on with ISU, again, Farm to School was one of the identified needs. So we've been pretty well able to consistently demonstrate that local need here. Another quick piece of what we're currently doing, that community food systems, it was one of our top priority. So with the work we've been doing there, we've already been doing site visits to schools in the county and have some potential for offering partnership with designing food education spaces or developing resources that we could share with educators and partners. And the same group that is working together with the Farm to School project here is also the group that wrote our Farm to School planning grant. So we wrote it back in November of 2016, found out in June of 2017 that we got it. And now we have until December of 2018 to get through a pretty lengthy list of items that we wrote into the grant. The primary funding in the planning grant is we hired a coordinator. So one of the challenges with a planning grant is you can't put any permanent infrastructure things in place. So we did hire a project coordinator. USDA staff has been great providing us resources, but mainly what we wrote into our grant is we're doing assessments with all 3 school districts in the county of different opportunities, whether that's opportunities for procuring local foods, integrating curriculum into the classroom on a more regular basis, tying that in with food sampling in the cafeteria, and we're creating food education spaces. So expanding greenhouses, adding outdoor school gardening spaces. We're basically spending the next year looking at all of those opportunities. We're going to do some curriculum trials. We're going to do some gardening trials. And then the end goal of the Farm to School planning grant is by December of 2018, we have to turn in a plan of action to USDA of what all the opportunities we identified, what worked, what didn't, and what we plan to do going forward. So the opportunity there, hopefully, is that will help us get everything kind of pulled together so we can either write for another USDA grant, like an implementation grant, or go to local funders and say this was identified as a need through a very defined process that, we have a long history of showing this as a need in the school, and this is We surveyed the teachers, this is what they wanted. We surveyed the food service directors, this is what they wanted. We worked with the administrators. So we have that research base. Wherever we decide we want to take the project, we've done the research. We know that this will work, this won't, and here's why. So that's the ultimate goal of the Farm to School Planning Grant, is to identify those opportunities, identify the low-hanging fruit, and possibly even identify some of the cost issues there. Basically, real quick, some of the partners we're working with. Our Master Gardeners have been awesome through this process. We've got a really large group of active Master Gardeners in Cass County. We also had an opportunity to partner on a food insecurity grant. We've got a very active summer lunch program here in Cass County at our largest district that has a very high percentage of free and reduced lunch. So we've been working with them throughout the summer to donate local produce to that free and reduced lunch program. Our local rec centers, as I mentioned, partnered with us on some of that summer youth gardening. We've worked with childcare centers and providers, training them on youth education activities and food. The schools have really been awesome in all the times we've gone and visited with them, everything from the teachers to the admins, the ag ed instructors. Food service staff has been willing to meet with us. We're starting to even work with some of the family and consumer sciences teachers to incorporate that into curriculum, and then a wide variety of community partners. So I know I'm about out of time as well, but again, I would be more than happy to take questions either now or later, and then there's, of course, my contact information if you want to know more about kind of some of our partners or how we've developed that. But this is kind of something that has been in the works for, I don't know, probably about 5 years. So lots of partnership and behind the scene work that's happened. So.
Thanks, Kate. I think what we'll do is if you check the Q&A folder or the chat folder, if there are questions specific to you, and each of you can do that as our presenters, you can respond to the folks as they're asking the questions. And again, if something comes to you later, you can ask us at the end or later on. We'll go back to Teresa now, who has a little more information on specific resources.
Yeah, so thanks, Kate, for that great update on their planning grant. There's been a few places in Iowa that have received USDA Farm to School grants, and they're a great place to start, especially if you're working closely with the district to increase their purchases. The Farm to School grant we had in Northeast Iowa actually worked across the region to provide resources and people and staff on the ground to assist schools, as well as to help them with their procurement goals. So the USDA Farm to School grant is actually open for requests at this point in time. It's associated, it comes from the USDA FNS. There's $5 million annually in competitive grant funding. It is a national program. You can apply for a planning grant, an implementation grant, or training grants. The award amounts range from $20,000 to $100,000, and you can apply for several years or have a project that takes several years. There's a webinar coming up on December 8th. So if that's something that you're thinking about, put that on your calendar.
Teresa, I'm going to interrupt really quickly. The webinars were there over the course of this last week, and the grant is actually due December 8th.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. I just didn't want people to miss that one deadline.
Another one, well, and there's great resources on their website. They have all sorts of frequently asked questions and flyers and ideas for what a grant application could look like. So Cass County currently has a USDA Farm to School grant. So does the state of Iowa. The Iowa Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship, under Tammy Stotts' guidance, has a current grant, and that is to create an Iowa Local Food Day statewide celebration in fall of 2008 in Iowa schools. That grant has 6 main goals, which you can see on the screen. There's going to be opportunities for schools all across the state to participate in Local Food Day, possibly get some incentive money, get assistance with how procuring foods for their schools. It's really creating a neat network of producers as well as food hubs and people in this world to help make those connections. So be on the lookout for that type of information coming out later. The grant is just getting up and going. And again, the goal is to have that statewide celebration for next fall. Our local foods team also has a specialty crop block grant to help 10 schools that are looking at increasing their food procurement. We'd like to see them increase it by 10%. We're going to do this through customized technical assistance for those schools, sitting down with them, meeting with them one-on-one. There'll be additional resources available to them. Your school food service should watch for a readiness survey in November and instructions on how to apply to be part of the program at that time. So about another month. That section was really short, Lynn, so we'll catch us all back up.
Great. Wonderful, Teresa. Okay, so now we are going to hear from Laura, who does a lot of work with 4-H, and then she'll introduce us to another wonderful speaker.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Laura Lichty. I am with Iowa 4-H Youth Development and I'm the Healthy Living Specialist. So in just a little bit, I'll be sharing about how we're integrating local foods into 4-H programming. But first, I want to introduce you to one of our 4-H youth from Northeast Iowa. She's a senior at Turkey Valley High School and has been a 4-H member there at her school doing work in healthy living and local food. So Casey is going to take the mic and share about her experiences, and then I'll come back on and share a little bit more about 4-H as well. And just so everyone knows, Casey is taking a break from class to be with us today, and she does have to get back. So if you do have questions, please put them in the chat box and she can try and answer them at the end of her part. Otherwise, I'll forward them on to her and we'll be back in touch with her responses.
Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm Casey Roush, and I am a senior at Turkey Valley High School, like Laura said. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what I do in my school and through 4-H. So up on your screen, you'll see a slide that I helped create about the 6 things that I feel 4-H gives me. The first one, this is like a little introduction because 4-H is a big part of what helps me achieve what I am allowed to do here, so that's pretty cool. So the first thing that I want to talk about through 4-H is just that it grants me a lot of opportunities, and I wouldn't be as passionate about healthy living as I am without it. So it provides me with lots of friendships, and I've created friendships with lots of different students across Iowa and kids younger than me and older than me, and I've been able to express all the things I have learned. And then it has given me so much leadership. It's a great platform for kids to step out of their comfort zone. I do a lot of public speaking through 4-H and in the healthy living aspect of it. And it's kind of a lot of responsibility to use this leadership positively and influence peers around you. Then it provides me with a lot of networking. So I have met many amazing adult leaders, such as Laura, who have kind of showed me the ropes to healthy living and introduced me to future careers I could possibly experience. Through 4-H, I have a lot of community involvement. I connect with different community members in my hometown and talk about different issues. I got to know my community members through this, and I volunteer in my community through 4-H and healthy living. And then it provides making a difference. I've made a positive impact on my community. It has made a difference on my self-values and hardworking skills, and I volunteer a lot. And then it also provides me with a lot of education, and it educates youth on the pressing issues and basic skills. So that's what I have to say about kind of what the opportunities that 4-H gives me. And then now I'm going to talk a little bit about cross-age teaching, which is what I focus on a lot here at my school. So cross-age teaching is where high school youth educate elementary classrooms on monthly local food lessons. So we go in and we talk to second graders once a month, focusing on a different food about why local foods. That's most what we push. So we tell them that local foods are closer, they're not being transported as far, so they're healthier for you and they're better for you. And we actually sing a little song with them that we call the local food song, and we talk about that they're great for you, they're great for your family, they're great for your community and your environment. And we just kind of go through that with them every time and tell them why, and they catch on really quick and they love it, and it really opens up their mindset to why local. And then we go through a taste test of the month's food with them, which gets them excited and keeps their mind open about new vegetables and fruits and just the different categories of the My Plate. And with this, we do great taster rules, which is mostly just like be positive about the food, try new foods, and then we teach them about like the nutrition that each food gives them. And then through cross-age teaching, the students I've worked with and myself, I've gained a lot of leadership skills, teaching and educating younger youth. And this is just really exciting. I have such a passion for food and the local food and telling people about it, because it's such a great experience and it's something I feel like everyone should just know about and everyone doesn't know about. So when you teach this to second graders, it's really great to see what they take in from it, and that they go home and tell their parents that they want yogurt for a snack instead of something with a lot of sugar. And so that's really exciting as well. And then I'm also going to talk to you about a project I'm currently working on. So last February, I went to the Washington, D.C. 4-H Leadership Healthy Living Summit, and I created a community project there with one of my peers who went with me. And we titled our project Foods Connecting Families. And through this project, I've been allowed to go into the farmers market, and we've done a lot of like nutrition education. We reached out to community members to teach them about food safety and food preparation. And it's really cool because you're surrounded by locals and local food, and so it's great to be right there and teaching them at the forefront. And then Macy, my peer who helped me with this project, she did some cooking classes in her community and through her school that expanded a lot of kids' basic cooking skills so that they could go home and prepare local foods and fresh produce, which was really exciting because lots of students are undereducated on this matter. And in the future, me and Macy would like to reach out to food pantries and be incorporating local produce and fresh produce into food pantries and advocating for that in the future. And we just said that we could help provide recipes possibly that would allow them to incorporate like their boxing cans good with this fresh produce, so it's not sitting there because it doesn't have much of a shelf life. So that's kind of what I've been up to. I truly have such a passion for this. I think that it's exciting to see other kids create a passion for local foods and food nutrition and food and fitness in general. So yeah, that's kind of, I talk really fast, so I'm sorry if I lost anybody. But I don't know if there's any questions that I have, then I can get them emailed to me because I can't get to the chat box.
I don't think there are any questions at this time, Casey. So thank you for sharing about your experiences. And as an adult in 4-H and working with youth, it is really exciting to see the passion come out of your interests in this and educating the community about local foods and how it can help others. So we're so glad that you could be on the call today, and feel free to stay on as long as you can, but we understand you need to get back to class. So,
yes.
Again.
Yes, thanks for the opportunity. It was great to be able to share kind of what a youth perspective on it, and I hope that it encourages others to get more youth involved because youth are kind of the forefront of what's to come in the future, so it's great to be a part of it.
Awesome. Thanks, Casey.
All right.
Okay, so I'm going to continue on with my slide here. And I just want to share a little bit more about 4-H. I think Casey did a great job of showing examples of how youth can be involved in this movement too, to learn more about the local food system and how that can contribute to our communities. And again, in my role with 4-H, I'm the Healthy Living Specialist. And so in that role is really to provide new opportunities and experiences for youth to learn about healthy living. and grow those opportunities where maybe someday they'll be the ones taking the lead to promote and influence healthy choices in their communities. So I know most of our audience are extension members, but maybe not all really familiar with the 4-H programming. So we do cover an array of topics, and we deliver it to many different youth audiences. And some of those are in schools. And so today we're really focusing on that farm to school, or how do we integrate local foods more into our communities. And so we definitely have opportunities to reach a lot of youth and in a variety of settings. So in this work, working with Extension and local foods, I've learned about the vibrant local foods programming that we have, and the opportunities to collaborate between Extension partners and our community partners. And so educating our society about the local food systems, the opportunities it provides, the diversity in agriculture that Iowa can support, and how that impacts the nutrition and well-being of our communities, I think is really important. And it's also a conversation that we really want youth voices to be a part of as well. And so today I'm just going to highlight some of the work 4-H youth have been a part of to integrate local foods into their own work, and possibly provide a few ideas for our county partners and 4-H youth staff to consider as you build upon the programming that you have, and your efforts to come as you educate families and youth across your counties. So just a few examples here are fundraisers, for instance. So oftentimes our 4-H clubs are doing fundraisers, or our county office is supporting a local initiative, is think of local foods and how that can be incorporated. The picture here is an example in Northeast Iowa where a 4-H group partnered with the local food hub, and they sold local products from a local farmer, such as pickles or yogurt and cheese, beef sticks, apples, a good assortment of things. And this was in the wintertime when maybe not all of our fresh produce is readily available. So they really were creative and found a neat way to partner locally to help support their 4-H program and efforts. Guest speakers, inviting local producers to club meetings or your council meetings to learn about the array of types of agricultures in our communities, and expose youth to new ideas, and maybe doing a field trip to the farm and learning how that works. Also projects, and I think Casey really covered that in a couple examples that she's been a part of, but exposing them to local foods and seeking local foods as a partner in future project missions that they have. As well as community service. Are clubs looking for projects to do? Are they looking for a need to help fulfill? Could a local producer use a helping hand? Could their service help expose local foods to those in need, or just really raising awareness for the different types of produce that we can provide here in Iowa? And then the last point I wanted to share also is establishing clubs in schools. That's always another option or opportunity to grow 4-H, and that's an example. Again, like Casey's club is based in the school. They work on improving school wellness and being advocates for local food, as well as, you know, part of that could also be working with food service and encouraging the purchase of more local food. So youth have great ideas, but they also can help be some of our playmakers and approaching some of these project ideas in different ways. Now I just want to touch on a few specific examples. One is the Postville 4-H Garden Club. This is a special group up in Northeast Iowa. It's led by she's a master gardener, a retired family consumer science teacher, and just a great 4-H volunteer. And for the last 7 years, she has inspired over 100 youth to learn what it means to have a green thumb, and really gets them into their community garden plot, working throughout the summer. And in the last 7 years, they've produced over 5,000 pounds of produce. A good amount of that is sold to the school during the school year and featured on the menu. And often in the summertime, when school's not in session, a lot of those produce items are donated to local food pantries. And some of these youth from being a part of this club go on to start their own gardens at home and have seen great success with that. So it's pretty heartwarming to see the passion of this craft passed on to another generation. And it's neat that it can be done in a 4-H club setting. Another item that's been supported through 4-H and local foods partnerships is the cafeteria coaching program. This is a toolkit resource for schools or for our partnering organizations to learn of ways to engage youth into initiatives in school to expose kids to new foods, to try new foods, especially boosting consumption of fruits and vegetables. And they do this by role modeling. So the older youth are going into the cafeterias with younger youth and really modeling good eating behaviors, talking about the food that's on their tray and what those benefits are, but really being those motivators for our younger youth to make healthy choices and to try new foods in a positive way. So that's another great resource that I'll touch on here with curriculum and resources. These are just a few, and I know our local foods team has a long list of great resources for you to look into. And in 4-H, we also are reviewing those resources so we can share and support those for you as well. So I'm just going to quickly touch on a few of those. Growing in the Garden is a curriculum many offices probably already have. It's got lots of different lessons that you can pull from to do different day camps or workshops with youth. The only thing with the Growing in the Garden is there are some sections that, you know, as time goes by, there's new research that comes out and new guidelines. And so there is reference to My Pyramid, and we need to update it for My Plate. So although there are some updates to be made, it still is a great resource, and it is available to purchase at a discounted rate. There's also Growing in the Garden, Healthy Living and Local Foods, which is another great resource that could be utilized. And that one we're working on getting as an electronic version that you can download from the website as well. Another one is Junior Master Gardeners, Learn, Grow, Eat, and Go. That's a program from Texas A&M University, but another great resource to find lessons about gardening, to do taste tests with kids, and get them excited about growing their own food and trying new things. And then I already mentioned the cafeteria coaching toolkit as well. I know a lot of for those tuning in today that may not be a 4-H staff member, maybe you're in the county office or do other sorts of programming, I did want to touch upon a few other ideas with you as well. I think, and a lot of our presenters have already touched upon this today, but building partnerships with our local schools is so important to really help us reach a great number of youth and families in our state. And so I recommend seeking out what initiatives schools are already a part of and see how you can partner with them on that. One big one specifically is National Farm to School Month, which is this month. Ann talked about the Great Apple Crunch and how Linn County was able to incorporate that into a 4-H youth event. And so I think seeking out what schools are already doing or some large initiatives that Extension can become a partner and really help schools make it a fun event. Also, if you have a local foods coordinator in your region, reach out to them and see how they can help you brainstorm healthy living programming to provide in your community. If you don't have a local foods coordinator, I know you can always reach out to the local foods team here on campus as well. And after listening to some of these other presentations, and if you're getting really excited about exploring how you can get more involved, maybe there's a more significant role that you have identified where you'd want to designate someone to really help you move that forward. AmeriCorps service members are always another option to consider. Susan Hollenkamp here at the 4-H office, she really coordinates the 4-H grants with AmeriCorps, and you can always contact her to talk about getting a member in your community to really help with local foods and healthy living work as well. And also, I am more than happy to talk with you as well about growing opportunities for youth and engaging them in this type of work. So please let me know if I can be of any help in growing those opportunities for youth in your counties. And that's all I had. So I wasn't sure if there's any questions. Otherwise, I think that's kind of the end of our presentation.
Thanks, Laura. That is the end of our formal presentation, but we would love to take questions from folks if you have them. I know this is a long time and we've given you a lot of information. So if you process later or have to write later or get back to work now, we've provided all of our contact information, which you should be receiving probably early next week. But we'd be happy to take some questions now, either via the chat box or the question and answer screen.
So Lynn, I see a question from Yvonne on the Iowa growing season. We know it's limited, and how are locally Iowa grown fruits and vegetables provided during the off growing season? That's a great question, and it's something that we've been trying to continue to build the capacity and the availability of foods throughout the year. Some things we start to look at are those storage crops. If you're working with a local farmer and they have a heads up, there could be apples available through December, January, February. Working with schools to incorporate things like sweet potatoes and squash, turnips, those types of items that have a longer shelf life, the fall carrots, those can extend the season. You heard about Ann talking about the dry beans that are available in Iowa, and that's something that's available year round. We're starting to see more schools have greenhouse capacity, and that's a great place to plant things for the salad bars, whether it's salad greens or salad turnips, radishes, those sorts of items. And we're starting to see more processing capacity in the state. There are a couple places that would have frozen sweet corn or frozen berries that are maybe available for purchase by schools. So if you need specifics, feel free to contact us, but it just takes a little bit of creativity, I think, to be able to find those products and connect to them.
There was another question about contact information for grantors, excuse me, such as the USDA Farm to School and IDALS Farm to School and others. We can provide, when we send out information, we will try and provide the links to those. I don't know that they're on our resource sheet that we had, but we can certainly add that to the list and try and give you the connections. If you want to check before you get that, because it will be next week before that gets sent out, if you Google or go to the USDA Farm to School page, you will come up with information on the RFA. I will tell you right now, take a deep breath and don't get overly intimidated, because you'll have to go through about 3 screens before you even get to the RFA. It's a federal grant. There's a lot of bureaucratic necessities that you'll have to be a part of. There are things like a DUN number and a SAM number, and you'll have to indicate a person who will give lead to this. And there are certain grants that are available to certain types of agencies. I just listened in on a webinar, and they're very helpful. The staff is amazingly kind and helpful too, so don't hesitate to ask them questions. But I believe you'll actually get to the grants.gov site, and then you'll be able to click on a link that will actually take you to the RFA. It has a lot of fabulous information about who's eligible and which would be best, the best type of grant to go after. And then the specialty crop block grants. Again, that would be you would get information on that, I believe, from Stephanie Groom at the Iowa Department of Ag and Land Stewardship. So that's just if you want to get started and do some of your own research prior to us sending out information, that's where you could go. One other before, and this is a little bit of a different tangent, but I wanted to make sure you knew too. I know a lot of you are probably working with elementary, junior high, and high school age kids, or middle school and high school age kids. We also do, though, have 2 really amazing folks, and probably many, many more, but 2 that I know of doing work on early childcare, which is 0 to 5. The research and the information that we're getting is that if we can help children and families even younger, so from baby to that 5-year-old entering school, if we can help them learn better, or to add more variety to their own family diets, we have a much greater chance of helping everyone in the family, quite frankly, eat a healthier diet. So Kelly Handson here in Central Iowa, and Halisa Johnson, is that right, her last name? Yeah, she's in Northeast Iowa. Those are 2 women who are doing a lot of work on farm to early child care education. And through the National Farm to School Network, there's also staff person, Lacey Stevens, who is doing some of this work. So if any of you have questions or do work or would like information on early child care, that is a new and growing area where there is work happening here in Iowa. So we'd be happy to connect you to those folks too. Any other questions, comments, anything else we can do right now? I see one in the chat room. I'll read this and then folks can answer. How do you recommend lining up activities for a planning grant, which if awarded wouldn't be until 6 months later, and keep the momentum if you have school districts that are really engaged in the conversation?
I think that's a answer for offline because it's pretty complex.
Yeah, and we can get you that answer. Those grants are there are more intricacies. So, and there are people here who have gotten planning grants. Kate, we could certainly connect you with Kate Olsen, and then we can also connect you with Lynn Jenkins, who got a planning grant through the Des Moines Public School System. So those would be two women. Kate was on our presentation today. And she's outstanding, and she's incredibly accessible, as you can probably already tell. So we can connect you to her. Or you can go to Cass County Extension and you can find Kate's information, and she would be happy to respond as she has time.
Yeah, I'd be more than happy to chat, but yeah, I would say, and they tell you right in the RFA that they fund maybe 15 to 20% of the USDA Farm to School grants that they get. So when you're working with partners, what we found is you just have to go in and tell them that, you know what, we want to have a partnership whether we get this or not, and have some other options lined up that, so if we don't get this, maybe we'll look at this. But you kind of have to go in, write the grant shooting for the moon. And but yeah, it definitely, it takes, we didn't find out for 7 months until after we wrote the grant that we had it. And then they're like, okay, you got the grant, so start spending money. And it takes a little while to spool people back up after you've kind of had them on hold for 7 months. So there's definitely some ready, set, wait sort of things there.
Nice language, Kate. That's true. Teresa, would you like to go back to the questions that you didn't have a chance to answer? Even if you can put slides up if you want, or you can just answer them. But we've got about 8 minutes of whopping leftover time.
So when you register for this webinar, there was a chance to ask some questions. So I pulled out some of those that I thought kind of pertained to the area that I was talking about. One of the questions was concerns about chemicals used in the food and during the growing season and food safety. And the short answer to that is be talking with your farmers, use that retail checklist that I showed in my presentation to start those conversations with the farmers. It is recommended that you avoid chemical use in school gardens just because you have such a wide variety of health factors with a school population. We just like to try and stay away from any chemical use. And then make sure you're training your students and your volunteers on food safety practices so that we're washing hands and the food that's coming into the school kitchen is just, equally as good and healthy as anything they would get off of the distributor truck. Another question was about GAP certification. Is it required to sell to schools? A reminder that GAP stands for Good Agricultural Practices. That should be the base foundation for any produce grower. Some growers will, if their buyers demand certification, will actually have an audit every year, but it is not, certification is not required to sell to schools, but those farmers should still understand those practices. That's where that retail checklist can come back into play because it does go down each one of those pieces. Another question was, is it okay for a cook who works in our school kitchen to use produce from her home garden? That's a qualified yes. You would want to ask the same questions about the production practices as you would ask a farmer. Maybe have that person complete the retail checklist just so you have that information on file. But the USDA has said that those items are okay as long as they're being scrutinized at the same level as other sources of food. Are there any more questions? I can keep going.
If you have more questions, Teresa, why don't you keep going, and then we'll jut in. Caitlin and I will pop in if there's anything else to add.
Yeah. There was another question about how do school prices compare to retail prices, or the food that sells to schools. How do those prices compare to retail prices? We have to remember that schools are a wholesale account, and that because it's a wholesale versus a retail price, there's usually a 10 or 20% discount from those retail prices, which if you're thinking in food system world, those retail prices are farmers market prices or the prices that you'd see at a grocery store. However, the volume that a school purchases will usually offset that discount for the farmer because they're able to sell more product at once. So in our experience, the farmers haven't necessarily grumbled too much about getting a lower price just because they're selling a lot more. And they're not having to put as much effort into selling that product, meaning going to a farmer's market every weekend for the whole month of October to be able to sell the same amount. Schools are also a great market for that number 2 produce. So that means, you know, the smaller sized apples or the cucumbers that aren't perfectly straight. We sell a lot of number 2, or we use a lot of number 2 cabbage in schools because it just gets chopped up for coleslaw. I heard lately that the one farmer has been selling cabbages as big as their heads to the school, and because it's just getting chopped up, it goes through the chopper just like everything else. So those are types of ways that produce can be used at a more affordable option for schools.
Does that cover all your questions that you had beforehand, Teresa?
There was one more asked about how do food hubs procure local foods? And the answer to that is it depends. It depends on the food hub because every food hub is different, but they generally work on an availability from farms. And, you know, they've had prior conversations with farmers about what products they might have and what prices are acceptable. If a school has awarded a food hub the bid for their purchase, that price has already been set through that bidding process, and the delivery dates and quantities are usually known. So then the farmers will go, or the food hub staff will go back to the farmers and start talking about how do we put this order together.
Excellent. I did want to share one of our participants, Susan DeBleek, who is affiliated with the Master Gardener program and has also in one of her, in her past work, she has done a lot with farm to school and curriculum and school garden one-on-one training. And she said, I'd like to just read an invitation she's extended. She says, join us at the School Garden 101, Train the Trainer for Extension and ISU Extension and Outreach. It is, you'll learn how to offer School Garden 101 in your community in late winter 2018. They'll provide you with great resources and ideas. This meeting will be from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Friday, November 10th at the Polk County ISU Extension and Outreach Office in Altoona. This is for all Extension and Outreach staff and their partners, which could be FoodCorps, AmeriCorps, partner organizations, Master Gardener volunteers, etc. You can sign up at a link that we will provide in our resources. And she says it's free, no cost, and there are mileage reimbursements thanks to Keep Iowa Beautiful. So Caitlin can add this to our information that will go out, and then you will get this opportunity. But love to have you mark your calendar for Friday, November 10th. This would be a wonderful opportunity to gain some more information. We are just about to the end, but time for another question if you'd like. If anybody has any more. I don't see anything. I think I will, I want to send out a huge thank you to Caitlin Szymanski, who has been a silent partner, but has been the core and the crux of this webinar. It was her good work and great idea through the work that she's doing with county employees to ask us to join her in doing this webinar. But a huge thank you to Caitlin for all the effort she did to deal with the logistics and getting us together and guiding us all along the way. Also to each of the participants online, Anne and Chelsea, Laura, Teresa, Kate, and Casey, if you'll pass that along, Laura. This was a great opportunity for us to be able to share the reason that we do this work with Farm to School and the passion that we have for this. As we've all said multiple times, we hope that we'll be an ongoing resource for you. And if at any point in time you have questions or want to bounce ideas around with us, just let us know. You'll have our contact information as soon as this goes out. So again, thank you so much, everybody, for attending. And we hope you have a great rest of the week, and we'll look forward to our paths crossing in the future. Have a great day.